Hello, friends. Good evening, and welcome to the weekly nonfiction post SHTF book club. For those of you who are joining us and didn't have the opportunity to meet the live, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button or the dislike, either one. Leave us a comment down the bottom, and there should be the schedule on the thumbnail of the show to give you an outline of what we're covering each week for the next couple weeks. And so we're doing this book, this fantastic book by Ted Riley, Prepare Your Home for a Sudden Grid Down Situation. Basically, one chapter a week. We're kind of taking his outline. I don't want to give you everything in his book. I want you to buy his book. Please, we're not doing this so that we can usurp what an author has done. He's put an awful lot of work into this book. It's very worthy of your money. Strongly recommend that you add it to your library. We're giving you basically an outline of what he's talking about and providing our own information. Sometimes it may be the same thing as what he's saying. Sometimes it may not be. But one of the things I don't want to do is I don't want to basically give for free something that he should be earning copyright fees on. So please get a copy of it. And oh, wow. Thank you, Scott. So Scott said he ordered a copy from my Amazon link. It's in the show notes. That means I'll get about 20 cents for those of you who don't know. Oh, by the way, that reminds me. Let me tell you what happens to the money if you buy anything off my Amazon link or the money I get for watching these, because YouTube does give me a subscriber fee as well as a viewing fee. I think they're one and the same. But 80% of what I get is given to other organizations. So 20% goes to the Salvation Army. The local commander here is a friend of mine. I support them. I support what they do. As a matter of fact, today in a meeting with him, he has obligated the Salvation Army to support the Getting Out of Poverty movement that we have going on. As a matter of fact, I still have my shirt on, my St. Vincent de Paul shirt from the meeting that we had today. And hello, Utah Mike, and thank you for that. Greatly appreciate it. So 20% goes to the Salvation Army. 20% of it goes to our local food bank. 20% goes to St. Vincent de Paul. And 20% goes to another organization, another food bank in a Catholic parish, the next county over. It's a very poor area, and they need all the help they can get. So 80% of the money that I make from any sales or anything off of YouTube automatically goes out and gets redistributed to our community to help people who aren't in a position as well as I am. Scott, hi, Laura, welcome. Great. Thank you. Great. Thank you, Laura. I greatly appreciate that. I was going to ask you something, and I lost my mind. Oh, well, that's the way it goes. Hey, listen, things are really going crazy out there. One of the guys in the meeting I was in today, it's a coalition of all the different not-for-profits. Well, not all of them, but a vast majority of the not-for-profits, as well as the churches in our community. And so representing the Baha'i Church is a guy who worked for me back in the 1990s when I was director of training, first for the Texas Air Control Board, and then later for the Texas Natural Resources Conservation Commission. We called it the train wreck. And so they changed their name to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. But anyhow, he was one of my senior trainers, a fantastic management trainer. And he and I were talking today. I said, it looks like the world's gone crazy. Everybody's got a hand grenade in their hand, and everybody's pulling the pins and doing it loudly so that everybody else can see that they're pulling the pin. Nobody's let go of the handle yet, but they're waiting for somebody to give them that evil eye excuse to let go of the handle, and everybody starts throwing their grenades. The world's in a crazy place. I would beg you to pray for peace and prep up. between financial conditions, between possible conflict conditions. I mean, there's so much going on that it's just unbelievable. So just do me a favor, make sure you add the world to your prayer list and pray for peace. That's all we can do. Thank you, Utah Mike. And that's where we are. Okay. My little rant, I'm sorry. But we can prep up. I'm going to do a video, especially on barter. I have a totally different take on barter than anybody else that you'll see on YouTube. And so I want to do a video on barter. I'm trying to figure out how to do it. It's going to be relatively long. Hopefully I can get it down to 20 minutes or something like that, something watchable. I want to be able to do some good editing on it. I'm trying to learn how to do that. So, but I have a totally different take on barter. And my take is based off of what I've seen from the writings of Soko Begovic and what he did in Bosnia, Serbia, Bosnia during the conflict there in the 90s, early 90s, as a result of Yugoslavia breaking up. And then Furfal Aguirre and his what happened to him down in Argentina, and he calls it Argentina, Argentina, and then Venezuelan prepper. And so those guys who are fairly recent have totally different takes on a lot of different things than what you're going to see with American theorists, preppers. And so I wanted to kind of take that and evolve it a little bit into what we should probably be doing in preparation for a barter town in mentality or whatever, what we're going to do in a barter situation. So let's take a look at this book, Chapter 3. Hello, Triple G Farms. So glad to see you with us this evening too. Okay, Chapter 3, a closer look at off-grid power. And so living off-grid simply means that your home is completely energy dependent. You supply your own power with renewable energy. The author says he's not completely off-grid. I'm not completely off-grid. I wish I was, but I'm not. So then he starts talking about off-grid power options. I want to show you mine. I have whole house solar. When they installed it, they said that they wanted to install it at 90% of average consumption. Well, your summer consumption is really high, and then your winter consumption is not that high. So if you average those two out and you get 90%, that means that in the summer, I'm probably getting 75% of what I need. In the winter, I'm getting a little bit more. But I didn't like that. So I said, I went in 3 phases. Believe me, I could not afford to do this all at one time, and I don't encourage you to do it all at one time. Phase 1 was I installed 16 solar panels on the roof. Phase 2, I installed a battery backup system. Here's the bad thing. If you put solar on your roof and you expect it to work during a grid down situation, it won't. You have to have the battery backup and inverter in order for you to use your solar when the grid's down. If you just have the solar panels and the power goes down, your house goes down. You have to have that battery backup and inverter. So getting that was phase 2. Then phase 3 of my home solar system was I upgraded. I said, I want 105% of maximum consumption. So because I realized that it will not produce 240 volts, which is what my air conditioner runs on, but I need to keep the house cool in a way. So I'm going to add some extra Black & Decker 110 room air conditioners. That's going to chew up a little bit more electricity. So I wanted to make sure I had plenty of electricity with me. So let me show you what I have. Hello, Theoxerus. Good evening. Good to see you. Present. Come on, present. There we go. Present, share screen. And I want to go down here to my in phase. So basically, here's what I've done so far today. I've produced 30.32 kilowatt hours of electricity. I've consumed 12.75 kilowatt hours of electricity. So I have an extra production of 16.84. This shows you my 16 panels. All 16 panels are working, and they all were at maximum production. And then if we come down here, we see a couple things. So this is my daily input output for my solar system during the day. You can see that the heavy orange is how much electricity I consumed that I have to pay for from the grid or from battery if I'm off grid. Here you see that there's kind of a light blue and an orange. So the light blue is the amount that I produced, and the orange is the amount that I consumed. So you can see both of them are light, so that means they pretty much canceled out. When we come over here, we see that I drew a little bit more. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's just a little bit of tinge of orange and then light orange. That means I consumed slightly more than I produced. But then we come here starting at, I'm going to say about 9:30 this morning. You see the sun started doing me really well. So I started producing a lot more power and recharging the batteries, if you will. So I produced all this, and then all of a sudden cloud cover came in right at 4 p.m. And then we had sundown. And so now I'm drawing a whole bunch of power, and that's either coming off of the battery or off the grid, whichever the case might be. But I'm still in a net positive for the day. So this green down here shows you how much my solar batteries are currently charged. So right now, because I'm drawing off the grid, my solar batteries are at 100%. Should the grid go down, my solar batteries are there and able to produce electricity for me until the grid comes back up or until the sun comes back up, whichever happens first. So that's kind of where we are. Let me check and see if you have any questions about that. But that's method number one, okay, is the solar system. So let me get up here and catch up with the comments. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Utah Mike. Did I miss it? Who is Judy Butterfield? Oh, there. That's who it is. Hi, Judy Butterfield. Welcome to the channel. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you. Who was that? Utah Mike, I believe, who shared her channel, or was that Theoxerus? But thank you for sharing her channel as well. We encourage everybody to support each other on this channel. We're all in this together. So quite often what you'll see happening is that my moderators will do a couple things. Number one, they were all drafted by me. They serve sometimes willingly, sometimes not willingly. But anyhow, I ask you to respect their decisions. We try to keep it nice and friendly to everybody. We try to be respectful to everybody. We'd have fantastic conversations in the sideshow. It's almost as if that's more important than what I have to present. But that's okay, because people are going to survive as a result of it. So you will see that we share each other's channels. And so I encourage everybody here to support Judy. And Judy, if you would be kind enough to support everybody here, that would be fantastic. Utah Mike wants a much smaller, simpler backup system, and I can understand that. I have a Jackery 2000 out in the garage with solar panels. I have a refrigerator freezer that is solar paneled with one panel out in the garage. So I also have solar backup, Jackery out in the garage. Now, if Blue Eddy or EcoFlow wanted to send me a model to try and show on the show, I definitely would try it, and show it. That's for certain. But I went with the Jackery based off of what I saw at the time and what other people recommended. And that was a pretty penny, let me tell you. That was, I think, the whole house solar, the 24 panels plus the inverter, battery bank, was pretty close to $60,000 or $70,000. So yeah, it was expensive. Now you know why I had to do it in 3 phases as money came in. I couldn't do it all at one time. So yeah, going smaller is wise. And then being able to determine what you're going to use that solar power for becomes even more critical. One of the things that they did when I bought the whole house solar was, one of the initial things they did was tell me, which 10 plugs do you want us to hook up with electrical power? And they didn't do that. It's hooked up to the power bank, to the power supply coming into the house, to the power panel. So it goes to every plug. But I think what's really great is it caused me to do an exercise, and I encourage you to do the same. If you can only power 10 electrical outlets in your house, which 10 would they be and why? And so, like one of the ones I chose was our bedroom. And the reason is because that's where I want one of the Black & Decker air conditioners to go. And that's going to be our cool room. The other one would be basically our pantry room, our preparedness room, because I'd like to keep a stable temperature there for all of my canned goods and freeze-dried goods. So you start thinking, you start having this kind of an exercise of where do I want to have electricity and why? Kitchen for exhaust hood, if I'm cooking in the house and things like that. So go through that exercise. Say, if I only could power 10 things in my house, what would they be and why? It's a great exercise. Let me see. Theoxerus says his grid power is so cheap that it doesn't pay to drop $40,000 for an off-grid solar setup. I agree. I'll wholeheartedly agree with that. That's not the reason I bought my solar system. I bought my solar system so that when the grid does go down, I still have electricity. That's the reason we're reading this book. It's not to save money. It's not to make money. It's because I want power when the grid goes down. Okay. That's the sole reason I have solar. We have a need to have refrigerated medication. And after reading John Forsyth's book, 1 Second After, that's what convinced me to get whole house solar power. Why is it seem like all of a sudden I don't have any light on me? I'll move that light a little bit closer. Okay, so that's solar power. Now, there is an alternative to having whole house. And the alternative to having whole house, of course, is having what other people are talking about, and that's having the smaller units. And those can be had for, you might be able to plug into them while they're charging your battery. And so most of them are, if you take a look at a Jackery or an EcoFlow or a Blue Eddy, that handled portion is going to be three things. It's going to be your solar, it's going to be your charger. It's going to be your, I'm going to forget the terminology now, right in the middle of a live. It's going to have your battery inverter. It's going to have your charger, your inverter, and your battery. So the inverter is necessary because basically what happens is solar panels produce 0.7 volts DC, each little cell. So those cells get stored into your battery. But most of your electrical stuff uses 110, 120 alternating current. So you have to invert that power from DC to AC in order to use it. So that's the other component that's inside that little handled necessity to have. And then of course, you have the panels, and they basically collect the sunlight, and then the sunlight generates the electricity within those panels. But having one of those is great for backup. How are you going to use it? You might use it to keep a freezer or a refrigerator charged. If you're going to use it for a CPAP machine, I have a friend who has a 1,000 watt hour system, and he got his at Harbor Freight. But anyhow, he has that, and that's what he plans on using for a CPAP machine during the night, should there be a cataclysmic loss of the grid. So just think, how are you going to use it? What are you going to use it for? When's the best time to charge, recharge, etc.? The next one, and Sue, me, and I have had lots of discussions about this one, and I think Pete kind of knows a lot of Triple G Farms knows a lot about this as well, and that's wind energy. So the U.S. Department of Energy, and let me tell you, here in Texas, one thing we don't lack is wind. Guarantee you that. We've got people who have lost shingles in the last 2 or 3 days off the roofs of their house because of 50 to 70 mile an hour winds. So the winds here, when they come, can be devastating. But you can count on pretty much a constant 5, 10, 15 mile an hour wind almost all the time. U.S. Department of Energy. So I'm going to quote out of his book. Okay. U.S. Department of Energy says in its small wind guidebook that a turbine able to generate between 5 to 15 kilowatt hours or kilowatts of electricity each month would be needed to power the typical home, which uses on average 830 kilowatt hours a month. So So what we're doing is we're taking the number of kilowatts that are generated times the number of days, and that gives you what you'll be using. He says to look at an example from the middle of that range, a 10 kilowatt turbine comes mounted on a 100 foot high tower that has a rotor diameter of about 23 feet. So if you wanted to provide the same thing as 24 solar panels does to my house, I would basically have to have a 23 foot long blade, 3 or 4 of those, on a 100 foot high tower. Now I've looked at some other alternatives. So let me go back down here to present, and we're going to go share screen. And yes, and I want to go to Amazon. If I can find it. There we go. No, this one. There we go. Okay. So this is a page on Amazon, and I'm not affiliated. I don't have these up for sale or anything like that. I just wanted to do it for information. But basically, it shows you the Automax system of wind turbines. And so it goes all the way from 400, 600. Now they can be Bluetooth controlled, up to 1500 watts. Okay. So this 1500 watt one down here on the far right provides 48 volts of electricity. Look at the price, basically $2,000 just for the turbine. So remember, we still need the charge controller, we still need a battery, and we still need an inverter. So those 3 additional pieces of equipment have to be bought in order for this to have any value to you at all. But if we take a look at it, the max wattage output on this is, and let's go with this center one here. I think that's a little bit more affordable. Is going to be 600 watts. You've got 50 amps at 12 volts, or 25 amps at 24 volts, okay, at 600 watts. So it can either charge your battery with 12 volts or 24 volts. It needs 4.5 mile per hour winds in order to be activated. And then it's going to produce 350 watts at 29 amps or 12 volts, or at 15 amps, 24 volts. And it weighs 26.5 pounds. This does not have a tower that comes with it, okay? So you're going to have to also purchase some sort of a tower, and these are the specifications for it here. So this blade, let me put on my reading glasses. It's kind of small space. The blade for operations, you're going to need 7.1 feet of clearance in all directions for the blade and for the turbine itself. So you're going to have a fairly high, I'm going to say somewhere in the vicinity of a 10 to a 25 foot high. If you have it at 10 feet, then that means you're not really going to get the effects of the wind because it's going to be blocked by most of the houses around you. So you're probably going to have somewhere in the vicinity of 25 to 50 foot tower to put this turbine on in order for it to be effective. Now, you might be able to do it with a 10-foot tower if you had that tower mounted on the peak of your home. So this is just another alternative, okay? I'm interested in this because as I study more and more about nuclear winter and the chilling effects that the fires could cause a blockage of the sun, just like a great day here. And you saw what happened when the clouds moved in on my solar system. It just dropped right off like it was a cliff. Well, if we have any kind of smoke in the skies that basically precludes the sun from reaching my solar panels, I have a worthless system. In the winter, during Ice-mageddon, I had 2 inches of ice on top of my solar panels and gray skies. I did not produce any ice at all during Snowmageddon. I need to have an alternative to the solar, although that will be my primary. I think this is a fantastic alternative to have for that. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's his next one, which is basically wind power. Then he talks about geothermal energy and capturing it. That requires digging, underground piping, all kinds of extra sense stuff. Micro hydro energy is also a good one, but you have to have flowing water on your property. So you have to have a creek, a stream, a river, something like that. Biogas is very interesting. I think I've told you about Teufelsberg in Germany. Teufelsberg is basically, they use it during the winter as a ski platform. Field Station Berlin was mounted on top of Teufelsberg. That's where we had our intercept of everything, especially 20th Guards Army was around Berlin. That was Potsdam was the headquarters for a group of Soviet forces, Germany. We call it GSOF-G. And then Field Station Berlin really had a good look in 20th Guards Army. They had a good look up north into 1st Guards Tank Army, the back end of 3rd Shock Army, 2nd Guards Tank Army. And they could also see a little bit, not much, of 8th Guards Army. That was primarily us and Field Station Army. Had 3rd Shock Army, 1st Guards Tank Army, and 8th Guards Army. We could see those pretty well. But anyhow, that hill that Field Station Berlin was mounted on top of is basically the rubble of Berlin after World War II. They took all the dead bodies and threw them into this pile of rubble. And then they threw all the bricks and everything else, and they built this mountain out of it. And I forget the height of the mountain, but you can look up Teufelsberg, Teuffelsberg. And so that's the mountain that was built out of the rubble from the city. They have drilled down inside of Teufelsberg with pipes, and they collect the biogas from the decomposing bodies, the Germans who are buried down there from World War II, and that biogas is basically burned in one of their power plants. And so Berlin, the city of Berlin, West Berlin in particular, has been fueled by the biogas of decomposing bodies from people who died in World War II now for 40 years, 50 years, something like that. It's crazy. You get down here to the bottom where you all are. Yeah, especially up there where you are, Pete. When I drive from your place up north on 183, and just before you get to oh gosh, I forget the name of the place. But anyhow, in Mills County, it's the capital of Mills County, Goldthwaite. The area around Goldthwaite is nothing but solar or wind turbines. Same thing, Interstate 20 when you're heading west, Sweetwater, that whole area, that's all wind turbines. I'm going to say that probably at least 5% of the state of Texas is covered by wind turbines, if not solar turbines. So it's crazy. Let me get your questions. Yes, wind power is expensive. Wow, those are all over the country. I'm going to say in the millions, probably in the millions. I know that I read something that said that just as they break even for the cost of the power that was generated, as far as the cost of them placing them, they basically, their life cycle is over and they have to be replaced. So they are not that profitable, but they are not in the red, totally in the red. So they do have a break-even point, and then they break down shortly thereafter. Very wise statement, Little on Prepper. Yes, all of us are different. All of us have different situations. So Utah Mike's asked if you can charge your batteries with a small inverter generator when no sun is shining. The answer to that is yes, but you need a special switch. So if I were to install, let's say, and I'll show you another option here in just a minute. If I were to install option B for charging my batteries, then what I would have to have is a special switch, because what could happen is if I had both of those generating power at the same time, or one of them was not generating power and the other was, you'd have backfeed or feedback, and when you get that backlash, it can destroy the other collector. So you have to have a switch so that you only have input from one source at a time. Now, you could have it where you have, during the daytime, you've got it on switch A, which is solar power. During the nighttime, you have it on switch B, which is wind power. And then if both of those go down, you have it on switch C, which is manual power, which I will show you in a bit. So yes, it is possible, but it requires special hookup and electricity and switching and everything else. And it depends on how far back you go. We could say people lived without electricity. So learning how to do that is also very critical. I agree. We're going to get into generators here in just a minute, and Gil, you're absolutely right. So having that, however, everything has its pros and its cons. I think that's one of the biggest mantras that I have on prepping is everybody's situation is different. And we also have to take a look at the pros and the cons of every single decision that we make. Tri-fuel generators are fantastic. I had an Onan 5kW that was tri-fuel, primarily ran it off of LPG, and which is natural gas. And but the maintenance on it was terrible. The filters would clog very easily. I probably had to put maintenance into it, replacing filters and everything else, maybe every 250 hours that I ran it. So I was replacing some sort of a filter. Spark plugs about every 1,000 hours. But then the other thing is fuel availability. So if we're in an off-grid situation and there is no grid, there is no power coming from the grid, and let's talk about post-SHTF, chances are we're going to run out of fuel sometime. So when we run out of fuel, those fuel-powered generators are zero help. So unless you have a supply of fuel in a post-SHTF situation, then you have to consider that. So in an emergency situation with the grid being restorable, where fuel is available, I would say that Gil's solution is the number one, probably the best way to do it. And we're going to talk about a couple of ways to do that in this book as well. I haven't read anything negative. I haven't read that much positive, Tammy, to be totally honest with you. But I'll tell you what, next week, if you could get some of those links on that would be fantastic if you would share those. If you do have some experience with that. That is phenomenal. 8 hours of generation at a 50% load on 1 gallon of gas. So if it has a 3-gallon tank, you got the day covered. You only have to fill it once every 24 hours. What have I got going on here? Okay. Yeah, and so I think that's a wise decision. Like I said, everybody has a different situation, and not only do we have different requirements, we also have different capabilities to install things. If it hadn't been for the fact that I inherited some money, we would not have the solar system that we have right now. Living on retired Chief Warrant Officer pay from the Army is not anywhere close to what Elon makes. Okay. So we talked about generators, standby generators. There are two types. There's the individual system. There's the whole house backup, like what Gil has. I think Generac is probably the number one sales, the number one in emergency backup power to have. Now you can get that where it runs off of either gasoline, diesel, or LPG. And so that's the natural gas, liquid petroleum gas. Or natural gas that comes in on your natural gas pipeline. So like here, I always prefer to have natural gas stoves. I like that flame instead of having the burner heaters that you can't, the burners, the electric burners. I think those are unsafe. So I prefer gas. Since I have gas, if I were to have a Generac, having it hooked up to my gas pipeline would be fantastic. I don't have to worry about running it, purging my old stale diesel or gasoline or anything like that. That would be an ideal way to do it. But I'm just afraid. Okay, the reason I'm getting off-grid power is because I think if we go to a cataclysmic grid failure, I still want to keep medication cold. I want to have special power to power some of the electrical devices that we are dependent upon. Remember, Jonathan Hollerman said 90% of the population will die within the first year because we're dependent upon medications and medical devices that are dependent upon electricity. So I want to last at least 2 years. Talks about natural gas, gasoline, diesel. Then he talks about portable generators. So I'm going to charge my even if I have this house fully charged, I'm going to keep my portable generator charged. I'll take it outside. Same thing. I've got small solar packs that will charge all of my different radios. I'll take those outside, keep those charged during the daytime. I will keep, so that I'm not using the house current to power my radios. All of my radios are going to be powered off of my Jackery or off of the smaller Nomad. What's that company? I have several backpack type panels to keep your cell phone and things like that. So I'm going to use those for all of my radios. And just I have different solar systems for different things. Yes, and so basically that's what I showed you with that Amazon. What the Amazon title is home and sailboat or home and boat turbines, and so those produce the 600 watt hours. So yeah, that would be an alternative. Let me see. So he talks about inverters, hydrogen generators, new on the market. Don't have to be that close to water. You can collect things, and then you're going to basically change hydrogen through electrolysis into hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen becomes a catalyst. The hydrogen is what you're going to burn. You're going to use that basically to run, let's call it a still, and the steam from the still then powers your turbine, and that turbine provides your electricity. Same thing with micro, what do you call it? Micro hydrolysis, let me go back here, micro hydro energy. So that's basically, you're going to have something similar to a wind turbine, but it's a water turbine. You're going to place it in flowing water, a creek, stream, river, and then that's going to generate your electricity because the flowing water going through the blades is just like the wind turbine's air flowing through the blades. Storing electricity. So you have three main options here: battery storage, heat storage, and inverters, which we've already discussed. So battery storage, you're limited to the maximum capacity of the battery. Heat storage, that's a little bit technical for me. I'm not that. So I'm going to read you this paragraph, and then you can kind of go from there. There are two variations of heat storage systems: thermal and battery. Thermal storage units are basically heavily insulated water tanks. They can provide hot water and store heat from multiple sources for later use. They generally hold between 54 and 110 gallons, but you can get bigger ones. Heat batteries, meanwhile, store the heat or electricity generated by renewable systems in liquid form, converting them back into a solid as needed. They generally take up less space than a thermal system and don't degrade as easily as standard batteries. So now you know as much as I do. Some of you probably know a lot more about that than I do as far as heat storage. Then the last one is he has about, I'm going to say 6 or 8 pages of step-by-step how to buy the components and install your own solar system on the roof of your house. So that's kind of where we are today. Let me get my bookmark in here for chapter 4, which we'll get into, which is heating and cooling next week. So basically, we pretty much discussed that. I want to check. I have something here. There it is. Okay, I have one more thing I want to share with you. He doesn't mention it in the book. This is how we were going to do it. Remember, I got involved in prepping in 1962, October of 1962. And it was called the Cuban Missile Crisis. My next door neighbor was the, where is it? There it is. He was the civil defense block warden, and he built a cinder block fallout shelter in his backyard. Very primitive compared to today's, to what we have today. So there were two pieces of equipment inside that shelter that were critical. The first one was the air induction system. So it had an air induction system with a filter on it that was hand cranked. So if you wanted fresh air to come inside the system, somebody had to sit there cranking that air induction system the entire time there was somebody inside the shelter. The second one was if you wanted electricity. So we had 12-volt battery lights, like Christmas, think of them like Christmas tree lights. But somebody had to be on a hand crank, and he had the bicycle type. So somebody had to be riding the bicycle, generating electricity on this kinetic generator that was on his bicycle. There are two styles. There are two ways that you can do the kinetic bicycle generation. The first one is there's a special thing that attaches to the hub, the axle, if you will, of the bicycle, so that as it turns, it creates, it goes through an alternate generator and generates the electricity, based off of the spinning of the wheel. The second one is you just take a standard bicycle and clamp it down on top of this machine, and you're using friction to generate the electricity. So as the tire rubs over this roller, that roller has the generator attached to it. So your tire is going to turn that roller as it turns, and you're going to generate that. You have a little bit of slippage problem there, but there's a little bit of lost energy, but it's a very good system. So I did find some on Amazon. I'll show you what they look like. Oh. I hit the wrong thing. I hit leave studio. Don't want to do that. Let me see. Share screen is what I want to do. There we go. So I think this is it. Yeah. Nope. That's not it. We'll go with that one. Okay. Yeah, that'll do. Let me make sure that this is showing up on the screen right. There we go. Okay. So this is basically the bicycle form of generation. Okay. And let me go over here where I can kind of tab on it for you. So here you see a whole bank. You got 4 or 5 bicycles. This is the friction kind, where see the wheel, and it's got a little rubber thing down here, and the wheel is coming in contact with this little rubber roller. That little rubber roller is turning the axle. That axle is attached to a generator, and it's just like the generator on your car. As it turns, it generates electricity. Then there's the other type, which is the hub. And so this is the friction here. So this is what your tire rolls against here. And as it rolls against it, it turns this axle. That axle turns the coil inside these wires, and that produces the electricity. Okay. Now the other type is where it's going to be actually here inside of your hub. And so you're using the hub itself to generate the electricity instead of the friction between the tire and the and that other generator. So this is another form. There's also another one you can get, which is the one we had in Lyle's backyard back in the 60s. And it's basically you mount it on a shelf or something, and then it's got these pedals here. But instead of using it as a bicycle, you're using it as a hand pump. I think that the bicycle would probably be have a little bit longer endurance than what we did with the hand generator. So, because you're going to be if you're going to hand crank your air, then maybe you could do both at the same time. Have one person riding a bike and hand cranking the air at the same time. But I wanted to share that as another alternative for you, just something else that you might consider as far as electrical production. Okay, so that's it for tonight. Let me see where we are as far as discussion, and maybe I can catch up with you. So, Gil, I have a question for you. Do you use StreamYard? I got a notification from StreamYard, and it's really strange because I'm only doing 1 hour a week. And so I've got, 3 hours so far this month? And they told me I'm about ready to exceed my maximum, and I have to pay to continue. Whereas I have in the past had 2 hours a week, and so that was 8 hours plus the 2 book clubs, which was 10 hours. I used to get 10 hours a week, and now it looks like they only want me to have 3 or 4. Do you use StreamYard? And if so, have you seen that same thing happening here in the recent past? Okay, let me catch up with the comments here. We'll start here. Wow. Amen. Amen. And like I told you, that exercise of where are the 10 plugs that you want to have powered. Thinking that, getting that mindset of I can't power every plug in the house. Which ones are critical to me and why? And then you start focusing on, well, maybe what I want is I want to have this room is my cool room, this room is my heat room. I have to have this room at a constant temperature because that's where all my food preps are. I need to have the capability to run my oven, electric oven, or electric rice cooker, or whatever in this room. So when you start getting that kind of a mindset, I'm going to say that's exactly what Utah Mike is talking about concentrating your electrical consumption in certain areas so that you are making very wise use of your electrical power that you are generating. Wood stove's great for heat. Now, that brings another, thank you, Judy. I was about ready to disagree with you as far as electrical production. However, as I say that, I'm thinking, Lee, you're wrong, because you have the BioLite, right? And so the BioLite is a small stove. And as you use it to produce heat, to cook, it has some sort of a mechanism in it that produces electricity based off of the heat in that BioLite. And it produces enough electricity where it has a USB charging port, and you can charge flashlights, radios, and things like that off of your BioLite. Then I also have my Vesta Instafire. So my Vesta Instafire uses 3 safe heat cartridges to warm the house. Okay, one of those cartridges hits a specific panel, and I don't know the right terminology for it, but that panel generates electricity that runs a fan so that the heat that's generated inside of the Vesta Instafire goes through and blows through that warm and then goes out and warms up a room. So yeah, flame can be used to generate electricity, direct flame, that is. So yes. That's a great idea. And so I also have one of those solar panels that is set up to where it does nothing but charge AA and AAA batteries. Thank you for reminding me of that, Neil. You're absolutely right. So Little on Prep says if vehicles aren't running, you can get a vehicle inverter and solar panel and use your car battery for extra power. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And I would recommend get some boat batteries, and they're called deep cycle boat batteries. But deep cycle boat batteries will last you a lot longer than will car batteries. Uh, wow, Gil, that's great. I've seen pictures and I've heard stories during the Great Depression of people taking their vehicles and converting them to gasifier engines. And so they would take basically a wood burning stove, a large kettle or a large pipe or whatever stand, and put that on the back of their car. And then what happens is if you have very poor combustion of wood, that is, you have a very low oxygen rate of wood, then it produces more gas, combustible gas, than it does flame and smoke. So then they would pipe that gas uh, from the improper combustion and pipe that into the engines of their vehicles. And so the old Model Ts and Model As, there are pictures of those running around during the Great Depression with wood-fired gasifiers on the back, providing the gas that was necessary to run their internal combustion engines. So that's a great idea, Gil. Great idea. I have seen, and you might check. Go to your local RV store, as if you're interested in buying one of those Class A RVs, the buses, and check out the solar panels that they have on those. Some really intricate designs as far as solar panels and inverters and battery backups and everything else. Just go look at them, and then you can steal those thoughts and do that for your van. Yes, micro environments are perfect for not perfect, but a great thing to have. And we've talked about that in the past. That is, if you think of the old canopy beds, that's exactly what they were doing. Is they were creating a micro environment inside the castle. So think of the canopy bed as being a type of tent inside of the castle, where you are basically warming up that micro environment by your exhalations. I am at the point now, Sumi, or that's Utah Mike. I'm sorry. I'm at the point now, Utah Mike, to where one of the requirements I have to buy a new flashlight is it has to be USB rechargeable. So yeah, I agree with you. Oh, look at this. Gil said I didn't get a chance to read it. Gil and I are saying the same thing. So evidently Rogue Gypsy has joined us. Welcome, Rogue Gypsy. Glad to see you. Thank you for joining us. Very true. However, when that's all you've got, that's all you've got. So, and if we are looking at a post-apocalyptic world with a possibility of there being a nuclear winter, that is, 80% of the sunlight that is being generated or that's out there does not reach us, and it lowers our core temperatures by about 5 degrees Celsius. The long winter, for example, like we had after Krakatoa in 1812, I think it was, 1813, somewhere around there. But anyhow, the Brits call it the summer the year without a summer. But anyhow, we know that certain things aren't going to be growing anymore, that there's going to be major things happening. So if I don't have fuel, gas for a generator, if I don't have solar power for the solar system, then I have to revert to some other form. So hydro, I don't have the river's about a mile from here. I don't think I can run cord that far. Or I'm going to need wind, or I'm going to need mechanical. And so that's why I've included those. Wind and mechanical, even though they require that mechanical requires a lot of carbs and requires a lot of effort and everything else. If that's your only form of electrical generation, I say we have to go for it. Thank you, Pete. That's very kind of you. I greatly appreciate that. Okay. Hello, ex-NYCOG Prepper. Good to see you. Thank you for making it. Let's see. Okay, that's pretty much where we are. What other? Gosh, what's wrong with my eye? It's my left eye. My left eye looks like it's going shut. Oh, maybe that's why I can't see. Um, uh, yeah, and I think I showed you that little gradation I have on my solar system. On gray days, they don't produce as much, but I get some production, which is great because what that does is that slows the depletion of my battery. So if I'm getting a partial recharge while I'm draining my battery, that's okay because I'm still getting a partial recharge. So that's one of the things you have to look at. One of the other things you have to look at. Well, thank you, Utah Mike. Um, we do have a surgery date, so they did find all those things. They found another hernia, and so part of my stomach has gone through that hernia, and he said it's about 3 centimeters has protruded. So 2.54 centimeters to the inch, so just a little bit over an inch long hernia protrusion, my stomach up into my esophagus. And so we've got that scheduled. I will be the first surgery for him that day. It's going to be Wednesday, the 16th of April at 7 o'clock in the morning. So if we have a scheduled Wednesday night, it's probably I'll have to cancel it because I won't be available. The last time that they did a hiatal hernia fix for me 8 years ago, I ended up spending the night in the hospital. And it looks like I'll probably do the same thing again this year. Gil says, yes, he has StreamYard, but last he heard it was 20 hours a month for free. That's what I thought. I barely used 4 so far this month. I wonder why they sent me that. Maybe they just want money. Oh, well, you know. So, yeah. Oh, good news. We had our successful graduation of our Getting Ahead class last night. So we're teaching some young ladies how to get out of poverty, how to change their mindset. Based on some fantastic books. Dr. Ruby Payne, she grew up in poverty, married a millionaire, then went back into the middle class. So she's been in all 3. So she wrote a fantastic book for her doctoral thesis on understanding poverty. And then Dr. Donna Beagle, same thing. She's had multiple exposure to all 3 and what it takes to move from one income level to another. And then Rich Duvall. So the 3 of them got together and put together this Getting Ahead and Just Getting By World class. 17 weeks long. We ran one. We graduated 75% of the women there. We had our graduation last night. And let me tell you, I am so, so proud of these ladies. That the work they've done, the significant ahas that they've experienced is just unbelievable. So as you can tell, I have a dedication to people who aren't as lucky as I am. And I'll tell you what, 60% of the world is luckier than I am, but you know, there's a lot of great people out there. Yes, and then, you know, Laura, now that you mentioned that, that would be a great way we could if we could take that generator and instead of having it horizontal, have it vertical, like in the millstones, okay, and then they had oxygen walking a continuous path, generating or turning that millstone to grind wheat or whatever other grain they had in there. If we could do that same principle with an animal or even a human and use walking to generate, Laura, you come up with a great idea. You can become a millionaire. Convert that into a business. I like that idea. That's great. Oh, well, here's what I will tell you. My last hernia surgery, they went in through my belly button. And so I will tell you that it was a very good recovery. I hardly needed any of the pain medication that they gave me. I hope that you have as easy and as comfortable a time as I did. I wish you the best, and fear not. If you have a good surgeon, you will feel so much better when it's over. and you shouldn't have that much to worry about. So we'll definitely add you to our prayer list as well. I agree. So we're not going to have the washer and dryer. That's going to be, I've got a hand washing tub and hand dryer outside in the garage. And so I have a hand spinner so we can spin our clothes. I would like to get a hand wringer. It used to be my grandmother's washing machine. It had a tub and did all that stuff. And then you had the rinse cycle. You had to basically hose the water in for the rinse cycle. But then it had a wringer as well. And I would like to get a wringer, but man, the wringers I found are really expensive. And I guess I'll have to find one at an antique shop. But yeah, some of the microwaves, some of the stuff that we have, we probably will have to do away with. Some of the larger appliances, especially the washers and dryers for sure. 240 volt like air conditioners won't be for us. I can guarantee you that. Rogue Gypsy. Wow. I understand that kale is fairly easy to grow. Now, I have a hard time growing anything here because I need to plant some trees and get a little bit more shade in the backyard. Anything I put in the backyard just basically burns up. I've got some tomatoes right here at the edge of my patio. I can do okay, not great. I can do okay with tomatoes. I can do okay with carrots. We've got some lettuce and cabbage in the ground right now before the heat comes, because that really does the thing on those. But I tell you, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, grapes, anything like that I've tried to do out in the backyard, I've modified the pH level of the soil. I've done everything I can, but they just get sun bleached, and so they can't take it. So I'm jealous if you can do something like that. Great advice, Utah Mike. Great advice. Here's my opinion on that, OG Prepper. Getting old is a blessing. I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but I hadn't heard from my best friend from high school in about a month and a half. And it was concerning because he and I usually exchanged on Facebook quite a bit. We were best friends in high school, and then he went in the Army. I went in after him. We still hung around together. Just 5 years ago, he rode his motorcycle. The state of Texas now has a motorcycle driving test is required to get your motorcycle license. He and I were part of the study in El Paso, a year-long motorcycle safety course that changed, because before that, you did not have to have a license for a motorcycle. If it was 5 brake horsepower or less, you did not need a motorcycle, did not need a driver's license to ride it. But then as a result of this class, Texas changed its laws. So he and I were in that class together. We had the exact same motorcycle, been motorcycle aficionados ever since. And he lived in Dothan, Alabama. He was an air traffic controller for the Army. And then when he retired from the Army, he went to work as civil service teaching air traffic control at Fort Rucker, the Army's aviation school. And so I went to his Facebook page here just, 2 weeks ago. And his younger sister, Lori, had posted that he had passed away. So, I'm of that age where the vast majority of my friends, I have outlived them. And so there's a reason for that. I don't know what it is yet, but there has to be a reason for that. But yeah, when you take a look at, and I was in a unit, Fuel Station Augsburg in Augsburg, Germany, back from 1976 to 1980. And, very few people in my specialty were assigned to that unit and everything else. And there's a memorial that comes out every October. And gosh, to take a look at the guys that you worked with, lived with, spent 4 years of your life with, and that list, 15 seconds per person, it's over an hour long now. So, it's something else. Just all that to say, I'm thankful that I'm still here. And that's what Helen does, is when I see that October special on Fuel Station Augsburg, here's my trick right there. Trick 3, Fuel Station Augsburg. So when I see that video come out in October, Helen will rub me on the back. She said, but you're still here. You're still here. That's what matters. So, oh, wow. What a great idea, Phylloxera. Thank you. So that's one of the places we'll have to go scavenging. That's for sure. Right after SHTF. Scott's washing him in his bathtub, wringing him by hand. Yes, that's when I say they are. They're very expensive. Oh gosh. What a great idea, Tammy. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, absolutely. The same thing that you're going to use to wring the water out of the mop, you can use to wring your, you know what? And those mop buckets are not that expensive. Great idea. You just have to stuff a whole bunch of clothes in there to get it to work effectively. But I'm willing to do that. Great idea. I got to write that down. Thank you. And we have to be very thankful of that. Yes, you're absolutely right, Scott. Thank you, Sumi. Rogue Gypsy, one of the things that we all have to do is start taking a look critically as we live each day. What can I do without? Okay. Or how can I substitute something else? When I was in Monterey, California, there was a water shortage. And so they put these timers on the showers and you got 3 minutes of water. Now you got to use that water any way you wanted. You could stall, you could temporarily stop it. But you basically got in, you got wet, you soaped off, and you did 1 minute to get your body wet and put the soap on. You halted the water, put the soap on and scrubbed down. Then you put 2 minutes to where you could rinse it off. You had 3 minutes of water. That was it. So I think, and that taught me the same thing I'm going to need for, my post-apocalyptic showers. I'm not going to have the luxury of standing under a hot water shower for 15 minutes. And, same thing with washing dishes. We aren't going to have dishwashers. We're going to have to be very judicious with our use of water there. We're going to have to be very judicious in our use of electrical power. A lot of things we're going to have to be a lot more careful with. How can we do this a different way that is just as effective, but doesn't consume water, air, or electricity? So very wise comment. Thank you. Okay, I think that's about it. So let me get over here. Oh, I didn't see Kaylin tonight. I wonder how she's doing. I hope she's doing okay. So Kaylin, I forget Kaylin's last name. Anyhow, she has a Sunday night live at 7 p.m. and she does MRE reviews. Gil, if you're still on here, would you do me a favor and put your Gray Man Prepping link on here as well? And we're going to go to the book of Numbers. So I strongly recommend that you go to Gil's site and watch him. He does about 3 lives a week. Book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So remember, the world's falling apart. The world's falling apart. Our country's falling apart. We're falling apart. Things are not the same way as they have been, and I don't think they're going to ever get back to them. So the only thing that we have is each other. So since that's all we have, hey, Patty's Garden, good to see you. So since all we have is each other, it's essential that we continue to be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key, and that's the only way we're going to get through this. Take care, everybody. Thank you for being here. I will see you next Monday night, and next Monday night, we're going to be talking about heating and cooling in a post-apocalyptic grid down situation. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.